So the second thing people are saying is, oh, well, you're lying because you didn't mention the homeless shelter, and so that means you're lying because you were in a homeless shelter for a month, you liar. How does that change whether or not I was homeless? The argument was how long I was homeless. And then you come in saying, well, you were in a homeless shelter for a month. That means that I was homeless, you dipshits. Being in a homeless shelter means that you are still homeless. Living in a truck means that you are homeless. Living in a tent means that you are homeless. Sleeping on your grandma's couch means that you are homeless if it is not your home. Sleeping on a friend's couch, if it is not your home, means that you are homeless. Living in a hostel means that you are homeless. Living in an Airbnb means that you are homeless. You know what means that you're not homeless? Living in a home that you are allowed to live in. That's what the meaning of not homeless is. Literally. So, okay, yeah, after the truck, I was in a homeless shelter because the apartment that I was supposed to move in fell through. They needed a little more time. So, there was a homeless shelter in between the truck and the Section 8. How does that change anything at all? When the whole thing was that she had gone on there and said that I was not homeless for 5 years. When I was. When technically, since my family is so adamant that my grandmother never loved me and never wanted me in that home, technically I was homeless for 15 years. Because every year that I lived with my grandmother, I was considered homeless. It wasn't my home. I wasn't allowed to be there according to my family. Therefore, even though I didn't realize I was homeless for an entire decade before I became homeless. And you can argue with me that all you want. Facts are facts. Look up what homelessness means and what it doesn't mean. Living in a truck is not a home. And saying, well, he took the truck back because you wanted to sell it. No. For one, I wasn't selling it. I was junking it. I wanted to take it to the scrapyard, and they were going to give me $1,500 for it. And the main reason that I wanted to scrap it, instead of trying to sell it for somebody else to use, was because I had just lived in it during a pandemic, and I didn't want anybody else using it. I lived in it during a full year of the pandemic. Why would I want to sell it to somebody who then might use it for themselves and might get sick from the fucking bacteria and shit that was in it? So, I wanted to scrap it for parts. I asked him to help me by driving it the mile down the road to the scrapyard. That's all I asked him to do, was just help me drive it the mile down the road to the scrapyard because I couldn't drive it. He refused and decided he wanted to take the truck back because he didn't want it to be sold. He didn't want money to be exchanged in any form from it. He wanted to donate it to somebody else who would use it instead of allowing me to get money, because at this point he had become he had to change his number because he was receiving harassment and threats, just like everybody who helps me. That's the main reason the church got after me. It was not because they wanted to. It wasn't a random thing. Somebody contacted them and lied to them. Somebody contacted Ryan and lied to him and told him that I just wanted money for drugs, even though the only drug that I do is marijuana, which is legal in California. So he requested that I transfer the truck back to his name so that he could give it to a charity that would use it. I didn't want to do that because I didn't want people using it after having lived in it for a year during a pandemic. But I felt morally obligated to give the truck back to him, even though I had zero obligation to give that truck back to him. I did not have to give it back to him. It was my vehicle. It was in my name, registered in my name. I had the deed. I had everything. Legally, it was my truck. But the man who gave it to me for it back. And I gave it back to him because I felt like it would be morally wrong to withhold it if he wanted it back. That's what happened with the truck. So y'all saying that I was never supposed to be living in it, I was supposed to be driving it, it was never mine, that's all a lie. You have created that to demonize me for something that I didn't do.